started the party without you. But don't worry, we're taking this thing into November. Uh-oh. We woke up Grandpa again. Somebody better get him some candy. Welcome to my home. Watch your step. I wouldn't want you to break a bone, but if you do, you can borrow one of mine. Welcome to my stylish haunted home. I can't take all the credit for its trendy appeal. The maniacal banshee in the closet deserves some praise.
Want your dentist to say, in the name of Jesus.
In the name of Jesus.
I break the curse.
I break the curse.
Of death.
Of death.
Of mammon.
Of mammon.
And Thor.
How did Beardo get brought into this? That's what I want to know. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to our Monday thing.
Our Monday thing?
Yeah, it's our Monday thing.
It's our Monday thing.
Yep. Hope you guys like the new time slot, 7:30. The UK people probably don't care for it that much because it's just later for them. We're going to bring on our guest here in a couple minutes. First, I want to say hi to everybody in the chat. So we got Cree. How's it going? Alyssa, how are you? Oliver, William, how's it going? Laura, how are you? Candy's in the house. Hello, Candy. And if I miss anybody, it's because I'm trying to fly through this. Dragon Ranger, how's it going? Plain Lane, Giselle, thanks for joining. Julie R is here. Let's get down. Oh, Cheza Doodle's in the house. How you doing, Cheza? Hey, Ken, how are you? Steph is here. Wayne is here. Anna Banana is here. JC McDonald is here. How's everybody doing? And we are down at the bottom, so we're going to go ahead and bring our guests. The first thing I do have to say, though, we're going to use Kenny Biddle's rule tonight. Everybody be nice, because I know we have some people that don't necessarily believe in this sort of thing, but we can all have conversations. So, as Kenny said, Biddle says, just be nice. We can all disagree if we want to and have conversations, but we just ask that we all be respectful. We're going to have a co-host on with us tonight for the first time in a while. So everybody, welcome Dawson. I'm sure you're well known amongst the community.
Hi, everybody.
Dawson, I wanted to have him on because Dawson is really kind of fascinated with Robert the Doll. And so I was like, let's throw Dawson a bone a little bit and see if he wants to come on and ask David some questions. So
is that the one thing we have in common? Haunted dolls?
I do believe in haunted objects, and the Robert the Doll thing has always been so fascinating to me. So, thanks for having me on, because really I'm excited because it's such a cool little story that, like, I don't know, I buy into it a little bit.
And we had David on about a year ago on, when I was doing the Warren show, and he is a fantastic guest. So without further ado, let's bring David on. David, how's it going?
Hey, it's going really great.
Good.
Tonight.
It's been about a year since we talked to you last time, and I was like, I got to have him on again someday. So, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself? I know you're an author. You're a key lime pie aficionado.
Ooh.
Yeah, I guess to sum it up, I'm pretty much an ambassador for the Florida Keys because the island kind of embraced me. I moved down here to start a ghost tour. That's what led me to Robert the Doll. But then I kind of explore every aspect. I love history. I love researching. So that's gotten me into key lime pie. I write travel guides about offbeat adventures because I like doing weird stuff. So I think I've got about 25 books about the Keys, and I've had several different ghost tours down here. Right now, I I own the Robert the Doll Experience.
Mhm.
And so just to clarify, so I don't own Robert the Doll.
Right.
The artifact is owned by the museum, Key West Art and Historical Society,
Mhm.
but I've been taking care of Robert's spirit for about 28 years. So I'm pretty much like the fourth doll tender in the row, because there's always been people who have I don't even know how it happens, but who see the spirit inside of the doll
Mhm.
and see it not as this horrible evil thing, but as a child that needs to be protected. And that's somehow the strange role that I fell into.
That's cool. And that's at a fort, correct? Isn't the museum an
Yeah,
actual
yeah,
fort?
Fort East Martello Museum. It's a great Civil War fort. Key West was part of the Union during the Civil War, even though we're about as far south as you can go.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's crazy to think that the Civil War was way down there. So,
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
I was curious on why there was a fort, and there's the answer. I mean, I had no idea that, especially the Union being all the way down there.
Yeah, and what ended up happening, they were building Fort Zachary Taylor because where Key West was located, it protected the United States from everything going into or out of the Gulf of Mexico. So they realized early on it was a very strategic place, and they started building the fort. And then with the Civil War, they said, okay, yeah, this is here. And there was a Union Army soldier who saw things heating up, and he said, I'm going to go take Fort Zachary Taylor. So in the middle of the night, he marched his troops through town, and they raised the drawbridge and raised the American flag. And from that point on, Key West was part of the Union.
oh wow.
A lot of people in Key West were Southern sympathizers.
Okay.
But the people here wanted to make their money, and the Pennsylvania 47th Volunteers were in charge, and they were very kind to the locals. So it was a good relationship for the most part. And it led to some really interesting things. But they built 2 backup forts because they thought the Confederates might attack from behind. That's how the Fort East Martello.
Oh, okay.
And never saw active battle, but it was a yellow fever hospital. So there's a lot of death there. And people think Robert the Doll's the only spirit there. There's 42 we've documented. There's many, many more.
Yeah. Yep. That's all. I mean, see, come here tonight and you get an education. I don't think anybody in the chat knew that. I certainly didn't know that. Or maybe I'm in the minority and I'm just an idiot.
I did. I was expecting to learn.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Civil War, it ties into this story so much more than anybody realizes. There's all of these elements of Robert the Doll's story that connect to different things, and the Civil War is just one of them. Yellow fever is another one. And it's all pretty insane.
Why don't you go ahead and give people the Robert the Doll story, the abridged version, because it's not here, it's over there, but I've got your book and it's a pretty large story.
So the basics of it are there was a doll that was made in Germany, and it was made by the Steiff company who invented the teddy bear. And it was given as a gift to a Key West boy named Robert Eugene Otto. And by all accounts, the boy became, he developed a strange relationship with the doll, one that most people wouldn't have. And he gave it his name, Robert, and went by his middle name, Gene, for the rest of his life. And they say that when he got in trouble for things, he wouldn't accept the blame. He blamed the doll. And one example, there was a servant for the family, according to these stories, and they say that she used to be pushed into the closet and the door would be held so she couldn't get out. And when confronted with this, he'd say, "I didn't do it. Robert did it." And this continued. They said the parents would hear 2 different voices coming from the bedroom, and they'd say, "Oh, who's he playing with?" And they'd look in the room, and it was just him and Robert. And then he leaves. When he turned 18, he went off to see the world. He wanted to be an artist. He got married in France, and then he lived in New York for a while. But when he was in his 40s, he came back to his childhood home with his wife, and he picked up the relationship with Robert where it had left off. And the wife hated the doll. The locals had stories. They'd go by and they'd see the doll moving in the window on its own. A plumber heard the doll laughing, and the Gene was abusive towards his wife, according to the legends. They say he used to push her into the closet and hold the door.
Oh, wow.
And when confronted with it, he'd say, "I didn't do it. Robert did it."
That's
And
crazy.
then he gets sick. He had Parkinson's. And I talked to his niece, and she said, yeah, for his last 10 years, he was pretty much up in that turret room at the house. And this is where they always, the legend said that he spent his last 10 years up there with Robert the doll, slowly losing his mind. This kind of confirms that aspect. He dies, and the stories really started going around because more people started getting in the house and seeing the doll. Myrtle Reuter was the next one to care for the doll. She was the next doll tender.
Okay.
I talked to her family, and they said after she was with the doll, she was never the same. It changed her. And she
Yes.
saw the doll as a child too. She said, this is the doll I need to protect and take care of. When I spoke to the gentleman who accepted the donation of the doll at the museum, and this was 1994.
Okay.
So Myrtle Reuter had the doll from 1974 until 1994.
Did she have it at Jean's house, or
She had it in the house. She bought the house from
Yep.
Pretty much from Jean's wife. There was
Okay.
one other person who bought it for her, but they exchanged the deeds the same day.
Okay.
So her and her husband went in there. They were in the house, I think, until 1980. I think that's the next time it was sold. They got a divorce, and she loved Robert so much that she took him with her.
Okay.
And so he lived on Bonfister Street in Key West. And that's when he got the termites, which ate the holes in his face. That's what gives him that distinctive look. And then, so Myrtle, it was August 18th that she took Robert to the fort. It was almost 20 years to the day from the time that she got him. And Joe Pace, who checked them in, said she came in frantic. And she was holding the doll, and she said, "This is Robert. He belonged to Gene Otto, and he's haunted. I need you to take him." And Joe said, "Okay, well, of course, we'll take the doll. Are you sure this is something you want to do, though? This could be very valuable." And she said, "Listen, I've had this doll for 20 years. I never had an issue with it. Last night, he shoved me into my bedroom, and it closed the door and held the door so I couldn't get out."
Oh, wow.
And then she left, and she died 101 days later.
Oh.
And Robert sat in the back of the museum. They didn't put him on display. People think that the ghosts have been mainstream for a long time because they have. But in 1996, nobody was talking about the ghosts in Key West. There was still a certain degree of a stigma attached to it. Not as much as there was in the late 80s, but people still didn't want to talk about it, and Robert wasn't on anybody's radar. So he was just in the back of the museum, covered with a drop cloth. Nobody wanted to see, the painter's doll.
Yeah.
And I had the good fortune of discovering his story when I was looking into the ghost tours down here, looking into starting one, and that led me to the museum. And once we started doing tours, I told everybody, I said, "You got to go up and ask them to bring this thing out."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's awesome. I'm sure Dawson and Dana have some questions too. You guys.
Yeah, just real quick, just to start it off, I was wondering if you know of any common misconceptions about the doll that you'd kind of like to set straight,
Yes.
because especially with this stuff, people will create a story and they'll go on the internet and they'll write a blog or they'll make a YouTube video or something, and I'm sure that there's only a fraction of it that's true, or maybe all of it's true, but just if you would want to start out with that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and that's a great question. You're the first person who's ever asked that. So most people want to take the legends that are good, like because they make a good story, and they like to expand on them and try to make them scarier. So when Robert, if you look at the articles about him that predate my time coming to Key West, most of them talked about him being mysterious. They said naughty, but they more described a child, and he was often called the enchanted doll. So since that time, somebody made up the story that he's the inspiration for Chucky. That started bringing negative energy up to the doll. And the energies that we bring, they'll manifest. There's other spirits waiting to take those. So that's one of the big ones. Robert was not the inspiration for Chucky. Robert's probably the best documented haunted doll. He has a lineage that we can trace. I uncovered factual information about his story that tied to the legends. So in a way, every haunted doll out there is based on Robert to some degree. But like the Chucky, the guy who wrote that, he said it was based on the My Buddy doll and blatant consumerism geared towards children.
Yeah.
So absolutely nothing to do with Robert the doll. Another thing is asking permission from the doll. People say you better ask permission to take his photo. And pretty much anytime I say anything about Robert online, people will say, did you ask permission? Did you ask permission? And the thing is, that's a man-made legend. Robert messed with cameras. The first time I met him, he messed with my camera. And back when it was all film cameras, batteries would drain and pictures would come out with something strange on them, or multiple pictures of Robert would turn out and nothing else from the roll of film in Key West wood. So he was known to mess with cameras, and somewhere along the way, a human said, well, maybe he doesn't like his picture being taken. And then somebody else said, oh, if he doesn't like his picture being taken, maybe we better ask his permission. And then that story grows. And then when the Ghosts and Gravestones trolley was going to the fort and taking people there, which they don't do anymore. They've still got a tour, but it doesn't include Robert. That story just started to grow, and they had it up on the wall. It says, don't forget to ask Robert's permission. Okay. And so it became this thing where, he's going to curse you. And the fact is, asking permission of an entity is a bad idea. And I think most people involved in the paranormal would agree with that, because it's almost like you're inviting something in, but you're also, by asking them permission, you're placing them above you. It's like, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? So, and with Robert, you're not dealing with just a single entity. There's multiple entities in there, we believe. And you don't know which one you're inviting in. So that's one of the big ones. And then here's the other thing, it's a human-made legend, but then people will say, oh, I didn't ask his permission and nothing happened to me.
Yeah.
It's like, well, of course it didn't. You were probably just...
It's not a real thing.
You were probably respectful. Now, there's other people who will say, I didn't ask permission and I had this and that happen. Now, bad things happen to everybody, to every human. Yeah. So I don't think everything that happens that's attributed to Robert is caused by Robert. I have no doubt some of it is. But it's disrespect. Like if people see up on the wall, don't forget to ask permission to take a photo, and then they say, I'm not going to do that. That's the disrespect.
Well, didn't you say that there's about 10 to 12,000 letters that you guys have that you have running on a screen that people apologizing? They're
not all on the screen, but that's the last count that I got was over 10,000 letters that he's received. And I see a lot of them. Some of them are like, hey, Robert, I love you. Happy birthday. Things like that. Yep. But there's a lot of them that say, hey, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be disrespectful.
Yeah.
And what our current theory is, there's a little girl spirit inside of Robert the doll. And I was able to attach her to Emmeline Abbott, who was a nanny for the family and a servant for the family.
Oh, okay.
And there's so many legends about Robert. The biggest legend was he was created by an angry nanny. We found out he was a stiff, but when I found Emmeline Abbott, and then with the census records, saw that she had lost a child between 1900 and 1910 when that doll came, we were able to piece together, hey,
Baba.
Jean's father was a doctor. She would have taken her child to him when the child had a problem. And we believe that the child died, and she blamed the family and sought out a voodoo practitioner and placed a curse. So this was our working theory. Cindy Kaza came down when they did the when they did the Robert the Doll shock doc on Discovery.
Yep.
And when I was working with her, she's a great psychic. She knew things at the Otto family home that nobody would know unless they had spent thousands of hours going through the archives like I did, because there's all these letters between family members. She knew which room was which, and she picked up on these things. And so that was pretty fascinating. And what she said is, the little girl died and a voodoo practitioner was sought out. But she said it's not just multiple spirits, but that this opened up a portal inside of the doll, and that there's many, many, many spirits. And to me, I'm like, aha, that explains how there's hundreds of people who are haunted by Robert at the same time.
Read it.
And the way we think it works is, okay, you come up, you're disrespectful, you stick out your tongue, you give the finger, something like that. You've got this little girl spirit who feels disrespected and she's hurt. And so it's almost like she wipes the sticky tar on you. And then these other protective entities come out of the portal, and they'll latch on to the disrespectful people, and they'll follow them home. They can infiltrate their thoughts. They'll have them struck by lightning, lock them in rooms, all types of things to cause havoc in their life. And the only way to get them to return to the fort is to apologize.
No.
And many people believe that whenever you write a letter or you come back and apologize in person, if you have the chance, many people believe that is when the luck changes and they no longer feel like, there's the curse, attachment, whatever you would like to call it, from the disrespect.
Yeah. And I've seen that happen so many times. I've seen it enough times where it's like, I believe I believe that's the way it works.
Okay, so we have a question from Steph. I'm curious about how the Osbournes came in contact with Robert.
That's a cool story.
So Jack used to have a show called Haunted Highway. And when they came to Key West, they called me up and they were asking, about different locations. And one of them that they wanted to do was Fort Jefferson. And they wanted me talking to Jack about forts, but, Fort Jefferson's quite a trip out there. So I said, well, let's film up at the Fort East Martello.
Yeah.
And that's where Robert was. And I told him, I said, oh, make sure you see Robert before you go. And filming's pretty tight. So we did that and we filmed our bit. But I think that's when he went and saw Robert the Doll. And then when he and his dad started Ozzy and Jack's World Detour, that's when he would have said, hey, let's start it here.
Yeah.
And it's so incredible because, Ozzy disrespected Robert right away.
Yeah.
And then they got the little Robert doll and took it around on their road trip. And Ozzy tried to blow it up. Ozzy tried to put it in a microwave. And of course they think it's good TV. But Robert apparently didn't like it. Remember, Ozzy got that staph infection in his thumb and it almost killed him. Mm-hmm. That was right after he had been disrespectful. And then he split his head open and almost died. He had he had an accident, damaged his spine. That's still causing him issues. And the strangest, he developed Parkinson's disease, which is the same thing that killed, complications from Gene Otto.
Why don't you tell people too what Ozzy did to disrespect Robert? Because that's
I think he did a lot of things, but the first thing he did when he walked into the room with Robert, he farted.
Right.
I was gonna ask if that was real, like if he actually did fart on Robert the Doll.
Yeah, I wasn't in the room there. I wasn't there when they were filming that one, but yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, show that question real quick.
Yep, I'm going to.
Dana's got another one here from the chat.
Green, this one's exploring with Josh and Kalani Ghost Hunter. Went there and both are affected, but Josh was seriously affected and almost had to call 911. What do you think happened?
So there's a lot of spirits up there at the fort. And I think when people provoke those spirits, they're happy to come out and show what's going on. And I wasn't there that night. Dan, one of my fellow doll tenders, was up there. And I talked to him the next day. He said, man, it was crazy what happened. He said, I've never seen anything like it. He said, they came trucking out of that room. They ran outside. They had to go back to their hotel for a little bit. They weren't sure if they were going to come back. And, a lot of people doing YouTube shows are out there to make something happen, and they'll create things. This was not one of those cases, and same thing with Sam and Colby when they were down. Sam got like ill coming out of the yellow fever tunnel. And when we were looking, it was like, whoa, this isn't good.
Yep.
They were back recently. I don't want to talk too much about it because it hasn't aired yet, but when it does, it's unbelievable what happened. There was a black witch moth in the fort. And if you look them up, these are attached to curses, and to someone dying. And I certainly hope, I think they're going to include the video of what happened. And it's just, it's, stuff you can't make up.
Yeah. So Steph,
real quick before this question, I was just going to ask, has Ozzy ever came back and apologized or wrote an apologizer? Because I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that he's publicly blamed Robert for what's happened to him, for some of his bad luck. Has he ever came back or wrote a letter?
No, he never came back and apologized. And there is a clip in the show where he's like, "I'm sorry, Robert," but it's you can tell it's
insincere.
Not really heartfelt.
Yeah.
And so they did the Osbournes Want to Believe.
Mm-hmm.
And during that, Jack took out the little Robert doll because they filmed that during lockdown, and he brought it out, and Ozzy jumps back and he's like, "Get that thing the hell away from me." He said, "That thing's ruined my life." And if you go out, I think one of the UK papers, I think the Mirror, they did an article about it, how Ozzy blames Haunted Doll for his years of bad luck. So I saw Jack at the Michigan Paracon 2 years ago.
Oh, cool.
And I was talking to him, and I said, "Man, why doesn't your dad just send an apology letter?" And he says, "Yeah." He said, "He really should." He said, "I'll talk to him about it." But I don't know. I mean, and I really believe that Ozzy would be able to go back and start touring again if he apologized.
We always crack up because we have a Robert the Doll, the one that spent the night, which we absolutely love. So we laugh because we take him with us sometimes to conventions. And so we took him to the first one we ever took him to. And this is not very long after we got him. Our dog Boo.
2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, he was only here with us 2 or 3 weeks. We were bringing stuff back in, and we put him nicely in a bag, so he was sitting on top. No, he got to see wherever he was going, whatever. Our dog, we don't know, she just decided she was going to pick him up and take him, and she was going to chew on him like a toy. we thought when we came in, it's like, wait a minute, where's Boo? We got her as she just ran into the room with Robert the Doll. We were just like, Boo.
I thought, oh my God, dog, you cursed us forever. You're going to sit there and chew on Robert the Doll. We're dead.
So now we're a little bit more cautious when he goes. His bag, when it comes back in, always goes up on top.
He's on a top.
But it's ironically funny too, because our one daughter was in Japan and bought him a Halloween mask. So for Halloween, he has a little mask to wear.
Oh my God, it's perfect.
Yep.
And it's funny because a lot of people who buy the little Robert souvenirs from the fort, and it's great because it all benefits the nonprofit. But sometimes people send them back. They're like, "Ooh, I didn't think this would happen." And I talk to a lot of people who do have things happen. And it's funny you talk about the dog because they had a decent replica of Robert that had been used in a Fantasy Fest parade.
Okay.
And I was using him for something, and I brought him home to my house overnight. My dog attacked it and mauled it. When I came home, and it was all a mess on the floor. It was like, oh dear Lord. So there might be something to it.
Yeah, so we laugh, Robert, and how he has to, because he used to sit back here, but we're like, we can't trust any type of any of the. No, it's like, no, he's got to go up higher because
anything that mimics a dog toy.
Yeah, because but it was just like and his. At first, we were like, oh, but his little hand was wet. It was like, oh. So it was like, yeah, boo, you can't do that anymore.
So yeah, Steph asked, what was your first reaction when Ozzy did that, or when you heard that he did that? Did you like say anything like, man, you shouldn't have done that, or did you give them any kind of warning or anything like that? Or
No.
okay,
No. I was like, how come Ozzy filmed up there in the museum didn't tell me?
oh shit.
No, and again, it's that thing where there's the artifact and then there's the spirits in there. So,
Yep.
But no, so I think it's all very interesting what happens, and I like looking at what happens to people after they disrespect Oz, after they disrespect the doll. But it works other ways too. After that happened, I started playing different music for Robert when I'd be setting up for the tour, because we do things with the lighting. We bring out chairs. We have a lot of equipment that we use during the tour, and so I tried playing Ozzy one night, and he did not like it. I mean, you can feel different energies in the fort, and it wasn't good. So I stopped it, and then I put on Motley Crue, and it was Motley Crue's first album, and he seemed to like it. There was a very good energy, and so I kept doing that every night, and I played it probably for like a month straight, and then on the 30th day, it was Easter Sunday, and a reservation comes in for Vince Neil, who's the lead singer for Motley Crue.
Cool.
And so I look at that and I think he wouldn't use his real name in a reservation.
Yeah.
Then I'm doing the check-in, and sure enough, Vince Neil from Motley Crue shows up.
Oh.
And I swear it's like Robert summoned him.
The universe.
The case could be made, it sounds like, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
we had
crazy.
We had a picture of Eddie Munster that I had hanging in the fort, and it was like autographed. It said "Good luck," and it was from like a Paracon or something. But I hung it up in there because I always loved Eddie Munster, and then I was doing some spring cleaning, kind of getting rid of some stuff, and I took that down so it didn't get damaged and set it aside, and then I couldn't find it, and I didn't know where it went. It wasn't down for a week before Butch Patrick showed up at the fort in the afternoon, and he came in and he brought an autographed picture of himself, autographed to Robert.
Oh, wow. That's freaking cool.
So, it could be a coincidence, but
yeah,
I don't know. It's pretty wild.
There's probably a boatload of stories like that, isn't there?
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. That is.
We were just talking before the show started about how, like, I really believe the universe, puts two and two together sometimes, and I didn't expect you to say that. That is like a good argument for the universe, connecting everything.
I'll tell you another one, Dawson. So when I came to Key West, a weird series of events led me here. I had a good job managing cruise ships, and it was great. But then I saw a ghost tour. There were things in place from kindergarten that got me interested in ghosts. But so I get to Key West. I was about to leave town because after 2 weeks, I didn't find a single ghost story. And not for a lack of trying. And so I'm leaving, and I got lost. And then somebody appeared in my passenger seat. And all I remember from them was their sleeve, like the sleeve on their coat. It was like this, kind of like a tweed. And I remember them saying, "Go back to the library." And I was kind of flustered. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I look over and I go, "I don't know where the library is." and there was nobody there. But I'd seen that sleeve, and I always wondered who that was. So anyway, I went back to the library. When I looked up from there was a sign that said "Library parking only."
Oh, so Jesus!
I go in. I'd been to the library 2 or 3 times. I go back to the Florida history section. This time, the historian was there. His name's Tom Hambright, and I told him, I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a book on ghosts of Key West," and he said, "Oh, there are none." And I thanked him, and I started to walk out. And he said, "Wait, no books, but we got ghosts." And there's this room. He walked into this vault. And I always wondered what that vault looked like inside, because he came back out with a folder, probably about 3 inches thick, full of newspaper clippings from the past 30 to 50 years of all the ghosts in Key West.
Oh, that's cool.
And I mean, that moment changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
And if that person hadn't said, go back to the library, and, you know, I mean, all those things. So it wasn't me who made this happen. There was some greater force at work. And then, you know, it had an article about Ann Otto. So I went and knocked on the door at the Otto home, which was the Artist House Bed and Breakfast.
Yep.
And the owner was there. His name was Daryl. He had owned it for a long time. And when I told him I wanted to talk about his ghosts, he said, oh, you want to hear about Robert the Doll?
Mm.
And I said, no, I want to hear about Ann Otto. He goes, no, you want to hear about Robert the Doll.
So was that your first book then?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, well, Ghost of Key West was my first book.
Yeah. But based on that folder that you got from the historian.
Yeah, a lot of it.
Cool. That's
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, it was. I struck gold.
Yeah.
So I talked to Daryl. He took me to the attic. I had paranormal things happen in the Otto home. Phone flying off the hook, bookcase opening, and then I asked Daryl, I'm like, "Where's the doll now?" And he told me that it's in the museum, but you have to call. You know, he's probably the only person in Key West who knew.
Yeah.
Apart from the museum, that doll was in storage there. And then I go there and I have the strange things happen and I see the doll come alive and I make it my mission in life to find out what's making the doll tick. And then I uncovered its true origins as a Steiff doll. I found out I hit this jackpot of Otto family history that was back in that walk-in vault at the library because Anne was a librarian.
Oh,
and
cool.
she left her family archives there and nobody knew they were there.
Wow.
And I mean, that, you know, I didn't know to look for them there. Something happened that led to that.
Yep.
But here's, to bring it full circle, about 5 years ago, I was invited to start operating the tours at the museum. You know, I had collaborated with them for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, the trolleys went there because it's on the other side of the island. But I said, yeah, I can make something work 100% inside of here. And I started digging into the Civil War. And my dad said, oh, you know, the first David Sloan, I'm the fourth, but I'm technically the fifth in line. And he said he was in the Civil War. So I looked up his obituary and it said he was with the Pennsylvania 47th Volunteers. And I said, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. Pennsylvania 47th Volunteers were in charge of Key West during the Civil War. They helped to build the Fort East Martello Museum. So his regiment was in charge of Key West. And to me, that just blows me away. And, you know, it wasn't until a couple of weeks ago that I realized I was looking at a picture of him. I was looking at old pictures with my dad. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the sleeve I saw.
Oh, wow.
So
I literally have goosebumps, by the way. I just want to point that out. Like the whole story.
Well, and it's getting weirder because, okay, so I start looking at it and so I don't even know where to start because this is also fresh and there's so many questions that I have. So the first doll tender would have been Margaret Steiff, you know, who made Robert probably. And then Robert comes over here. And then, so with the Ottos, the Otto family came from Germany. And Joseph Otto, who's the grandfather of the boy, he came, and the first place he stopped was Philadelphia. And then he went to Harrisburg, and that's where he joined the army. And the army sent him to Key West. And he started working with yellow fever. He was like a leader in working with yellow fever.
Yeah.
So then you've got Myrtle Reuter, who cared for Robert. Well, Reuter, German roots there. And she came from Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Key West. And then you've got me. I came from Philadelphia to Key West. But the first David Sloan, he was married to a German woman, Joanna Michaels. So they had this German connection. They were in Philadelphia. And then he went to Harrisburg when he was recruited to the army. And you know, it sent him to Florida. So it's very possible that my great-great-great-grandfather and Joseph Otto met at some point. And that would have been in the Dry Tortugas because I think my ancestor joined the Pennsylvania 47th right at their tail end of their time in Key West. I think he joined in Fort Jefferson. And then it gets pretty strange because there was a legend about the doll before we knew where he was made that said that it was given to the boy by his grandfather, who had purchased it from a man who made them on a boat back from the Dry Tortugas.
Oh, wow.
And we know that's not true because the doll wasn't made until 1904. They were both dead. But why is that story out there?
Yeah.
And I don't have the answers. It's just an example of how this keeps evolving, and it's something much greater than us that's controlling this. And I don't understand why, you can make connections with different things, but I feel like there's too many connections here.
Yep. Show that one real quick. So thank you, Paranormal Pursuits, for becoming a member. Do not fart in Robert's general direction. That's that's a Monty Python reference. Monty Python is always respected around here. So
that's so cool. I mean, it's literally really cool. I really do believe in, like, the universe and fate and all this and that, and everything you're describing. Like, almost every time you're about to add something, I was like, is this where it's gonna go? And that's where it went. And I'm like, no way. And then then you were talking about how, like, your great grandfather, in the military, and I was like, oh, that was his arm. And then you said it, and I'm like,
yeah,
that's so cool. That
it's funny,
like, you're supposed to be there in that moment.
Yeah, and I didn't really piece it all together. I knew there was interesting stuff going on, and then, like, just last week, it started dawning on me. I'm like, whoa, and and then I'm like, I guess that's kind of my fate, that I'm supposed to take care of the little girl and Robert the doll, and that was supposed to bring me to the family connection. And then it's kind of funny. I don't think this ties into it, but my initials would be DLS4, and if you look at that, it's pretty much dolls 4. Yeah. and I'm the fourth one to take care of Robert's spirit.
Is that your license plate?
It should be.
Dolls 4.
Isn't it crazy though when you start piecing those together, and then the aha moment hits you, and it's like, oh my gosh, why didn't I see this sooner?
Yeah,
that happens to me, and it's just like, oh my gosh, why did I not put this all together sooner?
Yeah,
and even if
I feel like a lot of stuff's like right in front of my face, and I don't see it.
And that happens when you're doing research on anything a lot. Like, you'll be looking for something and you can't find it. Then you find one thing, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're down a freaking rabbit hole, and it's a treasure trove. So,
yeah.
All right. So we have Steph has another one. I was wondering how children react around Robert. Also, do you think if a child disrespects Robert, things could happen to that child?
So if a child disrespects Robert, I've seen letters that come in where somebody stuck out their tongue at Robert and then had some issues.
Oh, okay.
And so they apologize. But here's the cool thing, it's the adults who go to the museum expecting Chucky, and they're the ones who bring more negativity, and they expect an evil doll. You'll get kids who go in there and they'll look at the doll and they'll say, Robert's not mean. They're like, Robert's nice. And they'll say, I love you, Robert. And it's interesting because especially children with autism, they'll definitely pick up on the child's spirit that's in there. And I think it's one of those things, like the kids will have imaginary friends and the parents say, there's nothing there. Stop it. Yeah. And then, when we get older and we see these horror movies where everybody wants to scare everybody, which is great. But those things happen. But children, I find, most of the letters that come in wishing him a happy birthday or saying, hi, Robert, I love you. I wish I could take you home with me. Those are kids, and they're picking up on that little child spirit that so many adults don't.
I mean, at least the replica, it is a cute little doll. I mean,
it's great.
This isn't freaky. This doesn't scare me at all.
You want to see another replica?
Yeah.
We're actually getting ready for a parade. Robert the Doll's spirit and myself are the grand marshals of the Fantasy Fest parade, which is kind of like the Mardi Gras of Key West.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's huge.
We're going to have a very large Robert doll.
Wow.
About 12 or 13 feet tall. And
that's cool.
Oh, wow.
So Let's see where
That one
there we
freaks
go.
me out.
That was spookier, way spookier than the one I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one, I made it with the same techniques that the original Robert was made with.
Oh, cool.
You know, Robert's the Stife doll, and they had some things that were very distinctive. And what I did is when I built it, well, I ended up inviting the spirit of the little girl. I call her Abby because her last name was Abbott, so like ABI. I just call her Abby. But I invited her spirit in here, and here's the cool thing. You know, she would have been a Bahamian American girl. The shell that I got to start building this around was actually a little Bahamian girl doll. And that's just the way it worked out for which one was the right size. I wasn't even thinking about that, but it's like, oh, wow, they're, you know, they both have the little black girl inside of them. But then I used the Excelsior and the things like that. And last week I invited the spirit. I said, hey, we're going to do this parade. And, you know, the artifact can't go out for the parade. I mean, the artifact's extremely valuable. And the museum has to take care of that. And that's why, you know, Ozzy was the last one that they took the glass off the case for. They won't even do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I invited Abby in here, and we're going to be in the parade together.
That's cool. I will say though, once we got our first Robert the doll, that's when I decided I was going to start collecting dolls now. So
yeah, she's buying creepy dolls.
So now I buy different dolls, and so.
Well, I think it's really fascinating because there's a lot of haunted dolls out there now. And, you know, I think there are people who sell them on eBay and they don't think they're haunted, but, you know, they'll sell it more than they would for just because they look creepy. But you go back in time and, you know, they used to teach children about the gods by bringing the gods into a doll. You know, if you go back to Africa and then Egypt and different places. So dolls were always meant to contain spirits. And I believe that the energy that we put out there, I think there's spirit energy all around us. And I think when we manifest, like when we focus our attention on a doll, I think it's very simple for that energy to enter there.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, there's a lot more haunted dolls out there now than there used to be. And I think a lot of them really do have energies. And in a way, you know, the dolls take on our energy as a way for us to cope with things. And that energy is very real. We're doing a paranormal weekend in Key West in the middle of March, where we're going to do like a deep dive, and we're going to recreate experiments, and that we're going to do the Philip experiment.
Cool.
Which
awesome.
was, look it up. It's a cool thing. I know you guys have heard about it, but we're going to attempt to create haunted dolls using some techniques that I've uncovered through the years.
I've always wanted to do something like that. I mean, Dana, I'm sure doesn't want me doing that in our front room here, but I've always wanted to see if you could get a doll haunted. You know what I mean? I've always wanted to try that.
I'm sure he's got one of my dolls. Because I have one doll so far that he was the first one in my collection that I'm sure he would try to.
Yeah, I would, just because it's creepy looking. I would.
Yeah, he's creeped out by it. So
yeah,
it's funny that you brought that up though, because I was like, actually, whenever the time was right, I was going to ask you if you believed in things like egregores, which is the Philip experiment. I mean, essentially, where it's so many people are just putting their, you know, emotions into like, okay, this is haunted, this is haunted, this is bad, or this is good, or whatever, and you create like that intentional haunting. And I was going to ask if you thought that maybe there wasn't maybe at the beginning there wasn't necessarily an actual spirit within Robert, but it was all of the negativity that Eugene would just specifically point at the doll and just put it into the doll. Just, it was the doll's fault. It was the doll's fault. And he sort of created that like egregore, that Philip experiment type of haunting within the doll.
I think he could have done that to a degree. But then I feel like that little girl really did enter the doll, and that's probably when things changed. And I suspect that he was taking care of that little girl, that they were friends. You know, they were the same age. They would have grown up together. They were both different. So I think they had that bond, and then he always saw that child spirit and always took care of it. So I kind of suspect that that's what's happening. What I think happens as a whole, I don't think most ghosts are who we think they are. I think, again, where we direct our energy, I think there's spirit energy out there that wants food, and we're their food. Like they can't eat a sandwich, so wherever we direct our energy, they want it. So I feel like, I can be at a house and I can say, oh, Enriqueta Marrero lived here, and when she doesn't like somebody, she'll swing the chandelier. And I think there's spirits around there that say, well, I'm not Enriqueta, but I'll swing the chandelier. It gets me some food.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times spirits behave in the way that we say that they should. There's some very haunted places where these ghosts behave the way that people say they would, but when you research them, the incident never happened. So I almost feel like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's all still very real, but it's not what we think it is.
Okay. So Cree has a question. David, what do you think about people that don't believe objects can be possessed?
I think they're right. I think everybody's entitled to their own opinion. We've all gone through life in different ways, and I don't ever try to, not anymore. I don't try to make people believe my beliefs, because I've realized that we've all had a completely different path. So, if based on what I've been through, I'd say I have no doubt, but I'm not going to argue with someone who says, it's not possible. For me, I've arrived at my decision because I realize how little we know. Science is constantly being proven wrong. We're very young in our knowledge, and you see it doubling every year. And I think in the not too distant future, we will see things like quantum physics starting to explain some of these things and how they work together.
I think too, a lot of the paranormal is almost like a belief in God. Like, scientists aren't going to prove the existence of God, but yet to people that believe in God, like, that's totally 100% a part of them. And it's not even up for question for them. It's part of their belief system, and they just know God exists. And I think too, that's similar with the paranormal. Is if you have to believe to, I guess, experience it, if that makes any kind of sense.
And I think there's frequencies that go on. The story I like to tell is, okay, if we share a car and I get in and I listen to heavy metal, I hit that button, boom, that's where it goes. Say that Dawson gets in and likes to listen to country music, boom, you hit your button, that's what you get.
Our car.
If I was to tell you, if I was to tell you, oh, there's heavy metal playing through this car all the time, you'd say, nonsense. There's only country music. It's because you're not tuned in. And I feel like it's the same with paranormal and the things that can change us: what we eat, what we drink, the way we're raised. I think there's so many factors. And I also kind of think, like, right on the dial near the picking up on paranormal, I think crazy people who see spirits, I think they're right near there on the dial with the same. I think they're really seeing things. And people who are on drugs or alcohol, I don't think what they're experiencing is fake. I think that they're tuning close to that level and experiencing.
I think some of it is made up, but I also believe that a lot of it is genuine. Let me do a little housekeeping here real quick. Go ahead and show that one.
This question, then I'll go through, because I got a couple of them.
Okay, well, we got we got some memberships we got to
but
we'll do that.
Just this question, it says, did you say you've witnessed Robert come alive? I'd love to hear what that was like.
So Robert doesn't come alive like people expect. It's not like he starts moving around. When I saw him, when he was brought out and put on the table, the curator, Stacy Russo, was talking, and she's like, "Hey, Robert, this is David. He wants to take some photos." And she set him down on the table and left. And it was just me and the doll in the room. And I looked at it and I said, okay, it's a little bit creepy, but I don't feel anything around it. This doll doesn't appear haunted. And I took a few pictures. And then I wanted to get a picture with his hat off. So I reached over, and as soon as I lifted his hat off, boom, the doll changed. His energy changed. The look in his eyes changed. The energy in the room changed. And what I believe happens is when the spirit enters the doll, that creates that quick illusion of movement, but it's actually the spirit going in or out of the doll.
Yeah, and it's changing in your mind, so you think you're actually seeing something.
Yeah, so I think that's most of the movement that people report. I mean, we have people still who see him breathing. Sometimes, like his foot will move a little bit. He threw his lion at some drunk people one night. So there is more movement, but it's not as common. But yeah, it does happen. And so here's the funny thing: when I saw him come alive, I'm like, oh, I got to get a photo of this. And I tried snapping 3 pictures. The camera wouldn't work.
Yeah.
I turn around and look at it. It took 3 pictures of my face. I turned back around to take another picture. It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And then I swear I heard like a giggle, and then the energy left the doll. You saw it go from an entity that obviously had something in it to it faded, and I was alone in the room again.
That's cool. Hey, thank you, Julie, for being a member for 5 months. And thank you also, Michael, for being a member for 5 months. We appreciate our members. You guys are definitely going to get some stuff here in a couple days. I'm going to upload some raw stuff from the school video. After the school video is out tomorrow, we're premiering that at 7:30. Or no, 7. God damn it. Is it 7 or 7:30?
I don't know.
7 tomorrow. My bad. It doesn't tell you when the premiere time is. So if I don't write it down, I always forget. It just says premieres and then the date. It doesn't say the time. At least maybe I'm too stupid and can't find it. But
do you? So I had another question, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Is the sailor suit that is on the doll currently still the original that was Eugene's?
No. Yes. Yes. The hat's not. They changed the hat. I'm not sure why they changed it. Maybe to make them look less creepy.
Deteriorated or something, maybe.
No, it used to be the hat was like turned down. The brim was turned down. If you see some of the old photos of Robert, then he definitely looks a little more menacing that way. So and maybe they just didn't want him to look quite like that. So when Robert was made, he was actually a harlequin, or like a jester or a clown. The outfit that he wore was a pink and green harlequin outfit. And so like the one that I've got this one dressed in, this is, it's a clown outfit. It's black and white. But that's kind of like to give the spirits closer to what they were for most of their life. Now, what I believe, I think that when Robert, I know that the whole time that Gene had him, he was the jester or the harlequin.
Okay.
And then Myrtle Reuter started dressing him in Gene's clothes at some point. And I believe when he was donated to the museum, both outfits were there, the sailor one and the jester outfit. And I think the jester outfit deteriorated.
Okay. So, yeah, that was like 120 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Robert's been a sailor for 20 or 30 years now, but for most of his life, he was a clown.
So you said the original, you said the Robert, the real one has termite damage to his face. Does he have a wooden face?
No. So
okay.
He has a felt face.
Okay.
But he's stuffed with something called Excelsior, which is basically, it's like a wood wool.
Termite
and it works well to stuff these dolls with, because you can shape it to a degree, but it's dense. But so that way you can make better features with it and shape it once you sew the felt on.
Okay.
And it's really amazing. I always knew what it was, but I didn't really work with it until I did this one. And it's really incredible. It's fun stuff to work with.
Yeah.
But it's the wood wool. So termites, they loved it.
That makes sense. Yeah. It'd be like termite food.
Yeah. There was something really cool that happened. I was in Robert's room getting ready for the tour. And I always tell him, I say, all right, it's almost showtime, and everything will be dark in there. And then this one night I said that to him, and then I turned, and it was like I thought I walked into an ant nest that was like hanging. And when that happened, I'm like, whoa. And I kind of go back and I start brushing myself, and I shine, like I'm touching things and shining around. There were no ants. And then I felt them all bite me. And my hair stood up. My hair hurt. the way it does when an ant bites you.
Yeah.
And then I look over at the case, like trying to figure out what's going on, Robert. And a single ant was crawling up the inside of his case.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
And then so I thought,
that.
wait, something's messing with me. Maybe one of the bad ones is messing with me. And then I talked to somebody after the tour and told them what was going on. And they said, "Oh, you said that termites had gotten Robert. Maybe he's just trying to show you that he feels like he has termites again, and he he wants you to do something about them." And so we looked over, and right at that moment, an ant crawled out of his face.
Wow.
Right
Oh, geez.
yeah.
So do you guys ever take the case off to check them over and stuff like that? And
They don't do it as much anymore.
okay.
His last case had it developed some cracks and stuff. I mean, and they're expensive cases. Once they have the alarms and the humidity control and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It gets damaged when you take it off. Sometimes they have to use the
okay.
big suction cups, and you have to get it lifted up high, and so it's they don't want to damage the new case or the newer case. So it's very rare they'll take them out. If there's a hurricane coming, then they have a safe place that they move him that's high and dry.
Okay.
And then, with some, if we have a tropical storm coming, they'll wrap his case in plastic, like just as a precaution.
Yeah.
But they do a good job of making sure he's taken care of.
Yeah.
I did hear that you guys actually, he does get taken out once a year just to do a complete look, or is that completely gone?
That's what used to happen. I think once we did that examination, and I made sure to document every little bit of it and get photographs so that I could research what he's wearing, if there were any marks. Nobody knew he was a stife at that time. But once I was able to identify him as a stife, there wasn't as much need. And anytime he's taken out, it any handling on a 120-year-old dog risks damage. So they don't do those examinations anymore.
Yeah, I'd be afraid to touch it, not because of any haunted stuff, but just like, dude, I don't want to be the guy that shit, his arm fell off.
Yeah.
Have you ever returned the doll for like a night or a couple hours to the artist house?
No.
My brain was like,
cool.
because I was doing some research and everything before you came on, and I was just thinking, like, I wonder what would happen if you brought the doll home for like a couple hours, and you just kind of like hung out and just kind of like observe, like maybe not even ask any questions, maybe don't do anything, but just bring it home. And it's one of those like movie scenarios in my head that like I'm like, how cool would that be to bring the doll home? But after you describe like how the case works and how like it's just, I'm assuming that'll probably never happen.
It'll probably never happen, and there's people who want to do it. I think it would be a really cool thing to do, but the museum, to protect them, it's not something that they'll do. But here's something fascinating. So there used to be a lot of activity in the artist house, or the Otto home, that was attributed to Robert the Doll. And this is before he was out on display. So there were these interesting energies working there. His spirit was without doubt at the Otto home. And then it was only after he was put out on display and people started visiting him there that the energy really started being at the fort more frequently than it was at the artist house. So I think it's another thing where the doll or the spirits go wherever the energy is. And now at the Otto home, it's mostly the feminine spirits at the house. You've got Ann Otto, you have Jean's mother, Minnie. And so it's a whole different energy. But so I think Robert's spirits could certainly return if they wanted. But I think they enjoy the attention where they are.
Right. If I was in that situation, I think I'd rather stay somewhere where, people were every single day, or I'm assuming every single day, just asking for you versus like going over. And I'm sure people are there every day too. But I would probably just choose to stay at the fort too.
Yeah, I think they want to go where the good energy is. And it's kind of cool. I do a lot with key lime pie, key lime festivals, stuff like that. And I found Ann Otto's key lime pie recipe. And I went to the artist house and talked to my friend there. And I told her, I said, "You're not going to believe what I found." And I told her about the recipe. And I said, "Wouldn't it be great if we made Ann Otto's key lime pie in her kitchen?" And so when that happened, it was like there was something that kind of changed. But anyway, I was leaving the house and I felt somebody running behind me. And I thought it was my friend Laura, like, because I forgot something. And then it was like somebody came up and like was patting me on the back, and I turned around and nobody was there. And then this smell of this really the most beautiful perfume I've ever smelled kind of rushed over me. And I thought, oh, maybe it must be a flowering plant or maybe some cleaning supplies. And I looked all around, there was nothing.
Oh, wow.
I think it was Ann Otto's ghost. And I think she was so happy to hear someone not saying, oh, you know, she was married to the crazy guy with the doll and she was abused. I think someone saying, hey, check out her recipe. Check this out. I think she loved that energy.
Well, and presumably, you know, if she hangs out at that home, she could have been watching you make it, you know, and just like been a part of it. Like, hey, like I imagine that would feel really. I just got like chills again thinking of my brain is like picturing it in the moment. That I assume you would love that.
Yeah, and you know, I think Anne knows that I love her and respect her. You know, because I've reached out to the family members I've been able to get a hold of to try to understand her. I talked with friends of hers, like her best friend. I talked to them for several hours, and I do try to get the real people out of who Jean and Anne were, because I feel partly responsible for sharing the stories that do not represent the entire everything about them. You know, like when you tell the ghost story, you can't share everything, and there's certain elements that come out. And I think that the Bill Geister, who I talked to, who was her best friend, he lived across the street. He didn't want to talk about the doll at all, but he told me so many great stories. And when I asked him about the doll, he said, I said, was that doll in the house when you bought it? Because he bought it for Myrtle. Yeah. And he goes, oh yeah. He goes, I hate that doll. I should have burned that thing.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, Sky, real quick for the membership. We appreciate that.
And I asked him, I said, well, did Anne say anything about it? He said, oh yeah. She said, he said, I saw Robert in the cedar chest. And I said, oh, does he come with the house too? And she said, I hate that doll. He was Jean's best friend. Of course, he never could make any friends of his own.
Oh, wow.
Wasn't he sheltered? Like, as a child, wasn't he kind of sheltered, or am I totally
I don't know,
misremembering?
You know,
that?
it's hard to say.
Okay.
He was definitely different. You know, he was a creative kid who probably couldn't express how he was feeling at the time just because of the way society was.
Mm-hmm.
So
cool. Dawson?
Oh yeah, I felt like I was kind of hogging every.
No.
You're asking questions. So I was gonna let you guys go. If you guys had any questions, let you like speak your mind.
Well, I know, like, David has said that he's done quite a few books. I know, so your books are out there, and I know you can, if you come down, you can get Robert replicas of the doll. We know there's rum.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I know. So what are some of the different things that you can get of Robert? I know we have, like I said, we have the rum.
Yeah.
We have a book. We have a replica doll. And ours, I spent the night with Robert, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a limited edition one.
And and then we have some really cute stickers and some different things. So what are some of the things that people could possibly get to help support Robert? And
so up at the museum store, and I've got links to all the official Robert stuff. If you go to hauntedkeywest.com, that's your one stop for everything haunted in Key West. I've got links to the Robert tours that I do, the official museum store, Robert Rum, and then I also list other ghost tours in town and haunted hotels, restaurants. I do some blogs in there, tell some different ghost stories. So that's, if you go there, you'll find everything you want. Now, they have an online store where they sell some of the things, like they sell the dolls and a package with my book, I think. But if you go to the actual museum when you're in Key West, it's a really cool gift shop, and they've got some nice stuff, and they'll have additional Robert things like shot glasses and mugs, and they do different cool T-shirts, and there's some fun stuff.
Oh, shot glasses! You had me at that. I'm a collector of shot glasses.
Yeah,
I
they've
went
done
to
a
Key
cure
West.
for.
Like, I went to Key West in 2022, I think it was, and it was before I had even really started with anything like paranormal. I was still just doing like vlogs. I, wasn't even necessarily a believer. I wasn't against it, but I wasn't like a believer. I didn't really know that you could go to places that were like haunted or anything. And every time I hear the Robert story, I always kick myself because I went to Key West.
And you
And
didn't see it?
I'd never heard of it. We went by the artist house, but we didn't know that it was supposed to be like a haunted thing, a Robert thing. We just drove by and we're like, yeah, that's like a famous attraction here. That's all we knew. And we went back to Miami, and I hate it because I could have went on a tour there and everything.
But
Well, here's the
now
great
planning
thing.
your trip,
It's a
aren't you?
good excuse to come back to Key West,
Yep.
Yeah.
which is never a bad thing.
See, I got
Yeah.
hooked on just the key lime pie thing.
Yeah.
So
And I found out last time when we had you on that key lime pie is not a one type thing. Like you informed us that there's multiple versions of it, and it's I was shocked. I mean, we have kind of one similar version wherever you get it here, and it's cool that there's multiple versions. Actually, the rum too.
This
So obviously
actually
I drank it.
yeah, I mean, I had
had
just
a-
a little sip of it, and it was like,
It was a very unique flavored
Yeah.
rum. It's
Yeah,
very
and,
unique.
and it's made with different voodoo spices.
yeah.
So I mean, you've got some cardamom in there. You've got a little bit of cinnamon, and here's
I
the cool thing:
tasted the cinnamon for sure.
if you chill it, it's great.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, if you chill it, it's really nice that way. I mean, it's good either way, but
I'd probably put it in hot apple cider.
Yeah, she would.
mm,
But
mm.
Kenny Biddle, who he's a friend of ours and stuff like that. I mentioned the other night we were on a live together, and I said, "Oh yeah, they got Robert the Doll rum," and he was disappointed that you guys are all out because he was like he was on the
Is it all out?
he was on the buy now tab, I think, and he was like, "Oh shit, they're all sold out."
Wow, the last batch must have sold out really quick.
Yeah, he was definitely like. It was within 30 seconds. He was on the website.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah,
thought
I think there's supposed to be more going up there. Key West first legal rum distillery, Paul Menta is the one who makes that. And he's a great chef.
Gotcha.
If people come to Key West, you can always pick it up there.
Yeah.
And then he's normally shipping it to the distributor for online sales.
Mhm.
So if you keep checking back,
Yeah.
it should be up there.
Yeah, Kenny's a big rum guy, so he was all in. He's like, I don't believe anything about Robert the Doll, the haunting, any of that shit, but I'll buy.
But we had him at the rum.
He believes in the other kind of spirits.
Exactly. Yep. So yeah.
So, if nobody else has a question, I have another one that's kind of more of a complicated. Oh, okay. There's a question.
So, do you find activity with Robert increases before or after storms?
Yeah, and I'm not sure why, but the activity at the entire fort really seems to get more intense when there's a storm blowing. And part of that, I think, is because we had some hurricanes that came through here when the fort was being constructed, and they caused some issues. So I think collectively the spirits who didn't have TVs and news reports and weather reports, when a storm comes into Key West, it heats things up. I also think that there's a possibility it charges the spirits, all that energy swirling around. That might be like lunch or dinner for them. So
back in the day, they probably would have gotten way more anxious than we do if they know something's coming.
Without doubt, because they didn't know if it was going to be a regular storm or it was going to, destroy the town. So,
and I know things get devastated, in today times, but back then, I mean, they didn't have near the construction stuff that we have
Standards or anything like that.
Yeah, but I think the water in storms, and the fort's right on the ocean. It floods all the time. I mean, it can rain and it'll start to flood because it's just really close to the ocean. But I think water charges spirits. I think it's, that's why you see a lot of haunted bathrooms. The toilets are flushing and running water. I don't know how it works, but I do believe that might be some energy for them.
I've always thought, lightning does as well, because I mean that is massive
Because you can
electricity.
feel like the static and everything in
Yeah.
the air whenever there's like a thunderstorm going on
Mhm.
and it's lightning. Is there so with the there's stories that Myrtle has literally heard Robert like moving around when nobody else was there. And I'm not sure about this one. It may have been somebody else, but in that they would hear like talking. Uh, so I was curious if there's like where that information came from, on whether it was like written down in a journal or it's just like stories passed on. Like, oh, Myrtle used to tell like my grandmother, they told me type of thing.
Yeah, so I think the story about hearing two different voices was really that's attributed to the parents hearing that, and so that's a story that would have been passed down through the generations before things were recorded. So that was part of the legend or the lore, but several different people have told it that way. So the thing with Myrtle, and this is what I like, I've talked to people who knew her. She's passed on, so it's not possible to talk to her. So the next best thing is talking to immediate friends and not people who heard stories. So in talking with her family, I was someone who knew her very well. That was great to hear. What a wonderful woman she was. What a great sense of humor she had. She was so full of life. And then when she got the doll, she was definitely taken by it and saw it as a child. And it was like some of the younger ones who used to love going to see her. If they'd be on their bikes, they'd kind of like, if they saw her on her porch, they'd kind of like try to go by without stopping.
Yeah.
Just because she had changed.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you tie that in with what Joe Pace said about, the way she was when she donated the doll and how freaked out she was, because I've found a couple of references where she was interviewed for a book about the doll, and she said, oh, people say there's voodoo and stuff, but I've never had any problems with it.
Mm-hmm. If you weren't, go ahead if you weren't finished.
No, I was just going to say, so you piece all those things together and you try to find the middle ground that makes the most sense. And that's why I love learning everything I can about the different people involved, because I think there's like 1,000 letters between family members from when Jean and Anne were in France, writing back to their family. And that's how I found out about Emmeline having a lawsuit against the family, about the nanny having a lawsuit. And it's like, that's the angry nanny. Yeah. But you see the way the nicknames they call each other, the things that they write about. And after you've spent hundreds of hours reading their thoughts, you almost, it's easier to pretend that you're them and see what makes the most sense.
It's almost like it's got to be almost like reading a book.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm wrong about some of it, but I think I've been able to piece together a more complete story than anybody.
You have reasonable doubt, at least. Reasonable doubt on like, okay, this makes sense. So like, I buy this.
Yeah, and the story keeps evolving. I think there's going to be more information that either I find or whoever comes and takes care of the spirits after me. I think there's going to be a more complete story that'll come to light. And some of that might be like, oh no, David was wrong about this.
Right.
That's
that takes a man to admit that you may not be right about everything, which is really cool, because it is so unknown.
Yeah, you're basing an opinion based on the pieces of the puzzle that you have,
right?
And maybe down the road, like you said, more pieces will be added to that puzzle to fill in the gaps or maybe change some things. Or one question I did have was, so YouTube paranormal investigations are a massive thing on YouTube. There's a lot of really, really big channels. Have you found that any of these channels, and you don't have to answer this or mention any names, but do these channels come in and embellish stories to make them sound darker and more evil than what is reality? Because I see that a lot in YouTube channels, is everything has to be dark in a YouTube video.
Yeah, there's a lot more demons out there now than there used to be, because demons sell.
Yes.
But For me, I think there's paranormal and then there's paranormal entertainment.
Yes.
And I think there's a place for both of them. And I think that a lot of the ones that are paranormal entertainment, I think most of us are smart enough to kind of know. But it doesn't mean that it's wrong because, if somebody went out there and did an investigation somewhere and said, hey, tune in.
Yeah.
Tune in as I go to this mansion and nothing happens. Nobody's going to tune in for that. And I think it's
pretty much my channel.
I think it's really cool when, people who are into the paranormal, people who believe, when they go out and seek this out and they're able to make a living doing what they love, I don't fault them for that. And I think if they really believe and if they're showing the techniques and if they're sharing the history of a place and they're bringing something to the table, I think there's definitely a place for that. And I think most of us are aware that it may or may not be true. We all know that reality shows may or may not be. So I think within society, there's definitely a place for it. So I don't think the people doing that are doing it wrong. For me, I like to be accurate with history to the greatest amount that I can be.
Right.
And then, I don't want to have somebody using their cell phone and having a K2 meter go off and be like, oh, you've got something.
Yep.
But, then if somebody believes they've had a paranormal experience, that's not easily pointed out by something, I'm not going to be someone to say, no, you got nothing. Because a lot of people really want that paranormal connection. And if somebody shows me a photo that thinks a ghost, I'm no expert. I mean, there's so many phones out there now. There's so many different things. And it's more, nobody can tell you whether it's something or not. And I think it's really, you were there. What was your feeling? What was going on? What do you think it is?
Yeah.
So I think there's a place for all that. And I don't consider myself a paranormal investigator. I believe what I believe. Yeah. And so I'm more like a ghost hunter. I like experiencing it. And when I can, I like other people to experience it with me.
And it does become a problem with, and what I've dealt with and what I found is channels that are going to say you're, going to the fort doing an investigation on Robert the Doll. You're right. They're entertaining people. They're not hurting anybody, but there's a lot of channels that go into people's houses. They pull out the phone apps that say general things and they tie it into a haunting that these people are saying they have. Right. And then they put demon in the title. And it's like, what do you think you just did to that family? You know what I mean? Like that's where it becomes a problem. But and
I think one of the issues too, as the paranormal really takes on this whole digital life, I think a lot of young kids are being affected by it in different ways. And I think that can end up being dangerous. We get a lot of calls from people who think that just because they saw Robert's picture online that they're cursed and that bad things are happening to them. And, I didn't find that used to be the case. I really believe that for the most part, you need to be there and disrespect Robert. I don't think he's going to curse you if you make an honest mistake or something happens. I mean, you've got to really be that way. And so I didn't think people could be cursed by looking at him, but now that that's being put out there and so many people are doing it and so many people doing this, sorry, Robert, it's almost, again, another self-fulfilling prophecy where I think that can be manifested. So I would love to see something, Becky Galantine, she's doing a lot with this too. I think somebody needs to take responsibility for these kids and let them know that everything's not a demon, everything's not horrible, that paranormal isn't always spectacular, and that they're safe. I mean, I'd like to see people teaching them how to protect themselves, teach them grounding and shielding, and about when they shouldn't be doing investigations and what can and can't hurt them, and how to be in touch with their spirit guides. I think if kids started learning that earlier, then it could save a lot of problems, a lot of anguish.
But they're out watching, TikToks and, where you got a 30-second impression of what the paranormal really is when it has nothing to do with reality. I mean, it's never a demon. That's what I tell people all the time. Like, it's never a freaking demon. Like, I believe in demons, but what you're telling me, it's not a demon. It never is, but so anyway, we did have a question on the.
So as everything on this planet decays away, what do you think will happen when the doll finally becomes dust?
I don't have a clue. I really, it's a good question. Not one that I've ever thought about before. But I do believe that energy always sticks around. And I think it comes back as something else. And I think elements of it still remain. But I believe that everything in the universe is one. And we're all sharing molecules and we're just one big functioning device. So I think that energy will go somewhere and maybe remnants of it will be there, on that area. Maybe it'll come back as something completely different.
But
Yeah,
who
maybe
knows how long, though? Because, I mean, look how long he's already been preserved.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. And
it
you
could
think,
be a long time.
yeah, I mean, the doll could be preserved for, another 1,000 years. And we need, you have mummies out there who are preserved, or a hurricane could come next week and he could be gone.
Yeah, let's knock on wood after
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah. I do have a question that you're probably sick of answering, but I wanted to ask, since there's people watching and I want to know myself as well. Do you believe that the doll, Robert the doll, has a malevolent spirit, energy, whatever you would like to consider it, within the doll?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely do.
You see the titles, and the titles are, and I wondered if you believe that, because some people believe that none of them are just like human spirits. I believe that they some of them are human spirits for sure, but yeah, I didn't know if you considered that there was inside of it, so that's interesting.
Yeah. And I used to think Robert was one spirit. I mean, for a long time I thought that. And when I was writing the book, I got to this one part, when I wanted to talk about the child spirit, I kept having issues. And then I started getting attacked, and I lost 4 versions of the book, and I'd get back, and always at that same point, the hard drives would go, it would disappear. And I couldn't understand why the spirit inside of the doll would be doing this to me when I was, going to be breaking the news that it was an innocent child. And that's when I realized that there's energies attached that thrived on the darkness, and they didn't want that going away. And that's why I was being attacked. And with the one that possessed me, it took, I was hopeless. And I thought I knew everything. I had a big ego at the time. And I'm like, oh, I'm Mr. Ghost Guy. But I got so freaked out, and I went through, probably a month of hell. And then it was a Santeria priest in Key West, and he brought his family from Miami, and they did a ceremony where they removed the spirits from me. And it was a powerful one. And, the Santero said, oh, I can't deal with this on my own. I've got to bring my family.
Is Santeria a big thing down there?
It was.
Okay.
It was. Now it's now you're hard pressed to find it. It's kept behind closed doors more. So I was very fortunate to find somebody who could help me.
We did an investigation. There was a house in Toledo. We call it the Bone House. Like, that's its kind of nickname, because a guy bought it. He went to renovate it, started tearing the walls apart. The wall cavities and floorboards were full of bones. They weren't human bones. They were animal bones, but they were, dog-sized bones. Like, I'm not saying like 4 or 5. I'm talking like you'd rip down a wall and there would be a pile that came out.
Wow. And
a lot of it was believed that, in that neighborhood, there was a lot of Santeria going on back at a certain point in Toledo's history. And we tried to find out about the religion, and people were like, don't ask about it. Like, just don't ask about Santeria.
Yeah.
And
so, to this day, though, you drive past that. I know when I'm coming up on that house, you just get a dark feeling when you go.
That should be something I should put on the membership side too, is stuff like that from back in the day. Because I mean, like, when I say full of bones, people probably think, oh, 5 or 6 popped out.
There's bones.
And there were like kids' toys, clothes, like there were personal things from people. Now
Yeah.
I understand rats can grab that stuff and go into a wall cavity, but this wasn't rats dying in the walls and floors. These were deliberate. They had clear saw cuts in the bones. Like it was crazy. Like it was really crazy.
Yeah, and Santeria is really interesting. It's actually an African religion and African gods. It came from the Yoruba region, and what happened is when slaves were brought over, you had the Christian masters, and they didn't like the slaves having their own religions, so they'd kind of they beat them and say, hey, you got to like our religion.
Yep.
So what they started doing was giving the name of Catholic saints to their gods. So like Yemaya, she dressed in blue, and she was she's the Orisha of the ocean. And so they said, oh, there's Mary, Mary, Star of the Sea, and she dressed in blue. So they had the similarities, and they did this with each of their Orishas. And so then the slave owners were like, look at them. They love worshiping the saints. So they called them Santeros or Santeria, the religious Santeria. And that's how it evolved. And, so people think it's a blend of Catholicism and the African religion. And a lot of times they'll say voodoo and think that it's scary. It's very powerful. I've been to the ceremonies and I've seen them work. And, I had the ceremony performed on me. And I thought that I owed it to that religion to learn more and practice it. And I tried to go too fast, and I realized very quickly, I'm like, whoa. It's way over my head. And there's an entire world out there that I'm not ready to be a part of. So it's very intense, but again, it's it's powers of the universe that these people manifest, and it's so to them it's no different than us going to or somebody going to church or synagogue or anything.
Yep. Dawson, I'm sure you got more questions.
So I do have one that I was thinking about. And it kind of comes back to like the same thing I was asking about Myrtle and her hearing the footsteps. There's also reports, this is online again, grain of salt type of thing, that like house workers would, like, while Eugene was sleeping, would hear and like they knew he was sleeping, they would hear footsteps from presumably the doll. And when it says house workers, I'm not sure if that means people that were renovating or just like servants or whatever, but that is out there that some house workers would hear the doll walking around basically.
Right. So the story there's two stories that I can confirm for you, and they both involve service workers. The first one that I heard was there was a plumber who was working in the attic room where Robert's chest used to be kept, and that he was installing a toilet, and that the doll was up there, and that he had seen it when he went up, and then he heard giggling, and he turned around and looked behind him, and the doll was moving from one side of the room to the other. And they say he left his tools, got out of the house, never came back. So I was able to dig through the attic. I was looking for anything that the Ottos might have left behind. When I was back there, there was a toilet that was never hooked up, and all the pieces were still sitting around it. And when I first started the ghost tours, I actually talked to the plumber, the guy that happened to. And I didn't know at the time if he really had, or, I mean, he seemed sincere. So seeing those two things, that makes me believe that really happened. Then so I talked to someone else whose father was, I think he was installing ceiling fans in there or doing something electrical, and he had similar happen.
And you're saying, so just to the plumber like saw the doll like physically move on its own, like the doll itself like walking across.
That's what he said.
What
from one side.
Fuck?
Yeah.
And when was this?
This would have been, hang on, bear with me. This was in the 1970s. It would have been before Gene's death. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, David, this This is a different kind of show than we did last year. Last year we weren't allowed to say what the fuck and stuff like that.
Oh,
We can
yeah,
say
my bad, my bad.
no,
Yeah,
we can
sorry.
say that now. It's all good.
Yeah.
This has
Sure,
actually been,
tell me now. You should have told me that in the beginning.
this has actually been PG-13 compared to how some of our lives go.
Some of the shows.
Oh
Woo.
my god, we got in one on Friday and it was
We talked about
You want to
some
see something
crazy
cool?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
this is something
I was
that
gonna
just
ask you
got.
about that. I was gonna ask you what that
Oh,
was.
cool.
So this, so this is a Stife doll,
Oh, wow.
and I'm trying to get it without much of a glare.
Yeah.
So you can see can you see the resemblance to Robert?
Yes,
Mhm.
for sure.
And-
Yep.
This is, it's a clown. This one, it's what's his name?
Christmas.
Stife. Anyway, he's got a name, but the original one was made at similar time as Robert the doll,
Mhm.
and you can just see some of the distinctive features. And Robert would have had the makeup like that. When you look at him, you can see the little rosy cheeks.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
see the eyebrows still, but that's all started to fade with Robert the doll. But he's a very distinctive Stife.
I'm actually laughing because my daughter lives in Germany. So I'm like, I know what Jeff's going to be asking for Christmas for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Yeah, I
Stife
didn't
company is
realize-
great. There's somebody from Stife company that they sent for Robert's birthday. They sent him a Stife lion
Oh, wow.
because
cool.
he holds a little toy lion.
Yeah.
But that's not original to him.
I was gonna ask you that. Was
It's
that
supposed to
that
belong
wasn't
to
original?
Gene Otto, but
Okay.
it was made in Japan, I think in the 50s or 60s. So Gene, it could have been his, but it wasn't original to the doll.
Okay.
But it was with the doll when it was donated. So
Yeah. Yep.
and it says it was his lion. So
And they sent one over.
yeah,
They
they sent
recent.
a couple of years ago for Robert's birthday.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm
That's
friends
cool.
with somebody from the Stife company on social media,
Mhm.
and so she knew. She said, "What's his favorite animal?"
Oh.
And I said, "Oh, he likes the lions."
Yeah.
And so it's a really really cool lion. And she sent me some pictures from the Stife museum, I guess, in Germany, where
Mhm.
there's an almost Robert twin. And
Mm.
I've seen 3 online in my life. They're very rare.
He's
There's-
writing it down.
He probably would have been a display in a toy store to sell smaller versions.
Mm.
Okay.
That's what I was wondering, because that's a
Yeah.
very large doll.
Yeah.
Like not every, especially like back in those days, like not everybody could afford, a massive doll, and most of the time, like, and dolls they kind of were a luxury, especially like a factory made one. So
Mhm.
one that big, I'm like, my thought was always like, wow, they must have had some money, or for instance, the display thing, because I didn't imagine a factory would just make a million of them.
Right. And a lot of people say that the doll was made in Gene's image, which is a possibility. I mean, the Ottos have family in Germany, and there's documentation where Gene's sister says that, they'd exchange gifts with the family there. So
okay.
one thing that I'm wondering, and I've been digging around, I haven't found anything yet. I think there might be a connection between the Stife family or someone who worked at the Stife factory and the Ottos. And so they might have been working there, and this doll might have been there. They might have said, "Let's make one in the boy's image." So that's just one of the theories out there. But we do know that they're very rare. 1904 seems to be the agreed upon date. Some people will look and say, "Well, they had different characteristics with this time, differences with the hands," but 1904 makes the most sense.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm sure it's been examined by the people that would know.
yeah, I sent a lot of photos to the Stife expert in
Yeah.
America.
Uh-huh.
She's got a cool blog. It's the My Stife Life,
Mhm.
and you can read that and you learn a lot of cool things about it. So she helped me out. When I first suspected it was a Stife, she helped confirm it.
Yeah.
And they have the button in ear. That's where you identify it from. They put a little
okay.
button in ear, and Robert's ear was torn off.
Oh.
Toys. Kids dragging around by the
Right.
ear.
Yep.
So that's why nobody could identify what he was.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the Let Me Out doll in Australia?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, one of our friends, side-eye guy, did a video. He went there to just kind of see it and handle it and stuff. I don't think it was an investigation, but He went. That's another
Yeah, he
famous
went and
doll in Australia.
interviewed the
Yeah.
caretaker, and it's one of the, if you just look up, the world's most haunted doll, it's always usually on every list. It's Robert the Doll, Annabelle, and Let Me Out. And
Mhm.
then there's also like, because I'm fascinated by like the whole haunted objects things. And Robert's story, I know it sounds silly, but the reason why like I hold on to the Robert the Doll story so much is Ozzy Osbourne said that like the doll ruined his life. And I'm like, Ozzy Osbourne's like, no disrespect to him, but he's like a wild guy. Like I don't think he's gonna say that unless he believes it.
Yeah.
And,
So
and
like
when
I
you
just
watch and when you watch Ozzy on the paranormal shows that the Osbournes do, he's not a big believer in this stuff.
No.
Mm-mm.
He's not like everything's haunted. He's very much like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
bullshit.
He's like, yeah,
But
whatever.
this is real.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's
the,
I
the,
it's a guilty pleasure of mine. Like people in my comments and chat don't hate me for this, but I like the Osborne paranormal content stuff that they put out. Like
Mhm.
I've that's always been a guilty pleasure of mine. I
Yeah,
love Jack
and
Osborne show and
Jack's really
Osborne.
good.
Yeah,
I
I like
think
him.
Jack's a really good guy.
Mhm.
I've worked with a lot of different people through the years, and Jack was great, and he's got a real interest in the paranormal,
Yeah.
and I mean, just a nice person too.
That's kind of what I've always thought is like Jack doesn't need the paranormal to be famous because he already was, and he really could, write his own ticket in life. So for him to get into the paranormal like he did, it's like he really genuinely has to be interested.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's always been my thoughts.
Yeah.
have you visited any other dolls that are like on a list that for like the world's most haunted dolls?
Yeah, I went to Zach Baggins Museum in Las Vegas, and he's got a doll in there that's supposed to be haunted.
Peggy?
Yeah, Peggy.
Yeah. That one
Um,
actually gives me the heebie-jeebies too.
yeah, and it's funny because it's another one of those things. I mean, with Peggy the doll, uh, there's there's no paper trail of where that doll came from. You've got the story about it, but so many people putting their energy into it, I think, made it haunted.
That's
Um,
that's what's cool about Robert is that's probably the most. I mean, and maybe I'm wrong, but like you pretty much nailed down the history of the whole existence of
yeah,
this doll. It's like
yeah,
Annabelle was just like, okay, the Warrens pulled it out of some people's house and nobody really knows who the people are.
yeah.
No one knows the history of that doll. I got to add this too, and this just popped in my head. So, has it ever been thought about to bring Annabelle to Robert and
Yeah.
let them sit in the same room for like a day or something like that?
Yeah, a lot of people have thought about that. I mentioned the guy who cares for the doll. I can't remember his name now.
Tony?
Yeah, Tony.
Yeah.
I had messaged him, but never heard back. I'm sure. I imagine he has other things going on, or maybe, you know, maybe anybody else with a haunted doll doesn't want to bring it around Robert because they're afraid of what might happen.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
like the
I don't
old
really know, but yeah, and it's kind of cool. What does make Robert so unique, like you said, is um, he's got a documented history. And I like that we
right,
were able to uncover that because first we just knew the legends.
right.
Being able to trace those legends back to their source,
Yep.
it's so rare. I don't think you'll find another haunted doll. I think every haunted doll out there, somebody's going to say, it was in a thrift shop and a mysterious man told me, oh, you don't want to buy that. and,
Yep.
and again, that's not to say that there's not something to them
Right.
or that something doesn't start happening with them, but it does make Robert very unique.
But Dawson, you would know this because you kind of talked to Seg about the Let Me Out doll in Australia. Isn't that one pretty well documented too? Because it's been with the same family for its existence, or am I
No, so
misremembering?
with the Let Me Out doll, I was doing a bunch of research about like haunted dolls, and you can't really like unless you're massive, they don't let you go anywhere really near Annabelle or anything. And I actually did email the fort for Robert the Doll like a year ago or something, um, inquiring about it, and I ended up just one day stumbling upon Let Me Out doll, and I had messaged Side Eye Guy, and I was like, "Hey, I can't fly to Australia. Like I can't afford to fly to Australia, but I love this. Like, are you close to this? And it just so happened that I believe he was like an hour and a half away or something. He was pretty
Yeah.
close, and he just, he did some digging and he found an Instagram account, messaged them and said, "Hey, like, do you actually like own this doll, or is this like a fan account?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, like I own it." So they ended up he got to go meet her and interview the woman who takes care. But really, it's kind of well documented before the family as of now. But there's little to. So basically, they found the like grandfather found the doll in the house in like a basement, and they have like carbon dated, I believe it is, maybe not, these certain nails that are like in the foot, and they found out like yes, it's over 200 years old. But other than that, it's really mainly what the family has came up with. And maybe I'm mistaken, his video will probably dives into it, but I don't think they've ever found one that's like the same thing. They just believe that at one point gypsies would make them in case there was like a death, and they would kind of like make it to look like the person who died.
Yeah,
Is the belief.
Oh, this sounds
So
fascinating. I'm gonna look into that.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Watch the Side Eye Guy's video. His channel is the Side Eye Guy, and
Great.
he did a video on it where he went and talked to the owners and stuff like that. It's a really good video.
Very cool.
It's kind of funny because the Side Eye Guy is very, very, very skeptical. Like he's very much a debunker and skeptical and stuff.
Mhm.
But he's ventured off into some paranormal investigation stuff and things like going and visiting this doll that like they're not massive videos for him. But I love that he's got that variety on his page. So
yeah, that's
really
really cool.
thing.
Side eye guy.
Yep,
The
the
side eye guy.
There's also one doll that
we call him Posh Twat too, by the way.
What? That's new.
There's also
Wow.
one doll that I don't think anybody has ever like seen or visited, and I hate that I'm about to say it out loud because someone's going to steal it from me, but that's okay. It's for the greater good. But there's a doll in Japan that is in like a I believe it's in like a temple, and the doll, apparently the hair grows, and they like they don't really consider it like a haunted doll. Like they don't necessarily consider it something like Robert or Annabelle or anything, but it's more like this is a weird thing, and this doll's hair literally grows, and like it started out short, now it's like really long. It's really weird, and I'm really interested in that too, but I don't really know.
That's haunted. I don't give a shit what they say or not. That's if a doll is growing hair, there's something not right about that thing.
There's a theory about like a certain bacteria or something that kind of like is like a moss
theory,
and it kind of grows. But I didn't look into it that much. But yeah, those are like the 4 that I know about that I'm like, if I ever get the chance, I'm like, yes, like I would love to meet this in person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, and there's so many fascinating, just with the dolls, the different stories. What I want to start doing though, I mean, I want to get a 24-hour doll cam.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to have
one going.
I'd love to have one going on Robert, but the museum has their different protocols. I think it'll be interesting since I've invited the little girl spirit to come for the parade. It'll be interesting to see if a spirit goes into this one and if anything starts happening. And if it did, I'd love to put a camera on that and just like 24 hours. And let's see.
Are you going to video this experiment where you're, kind of doing that?
I don't know.
Experiment thing? Yeah, I think you have to. Please.
I mean, I should.
Yes, you should.
I wish I had videoed a lot more than I have over the last 28 years.
Yep.
So I'm starting to try to do that more. But, it's one of those things where, like I said, I like to consider myself a ghost hunter. I want to go out and experience it.
Yeah.
I don't care about proving that it's there. So that's why I've never done a lot of video.
Yeah.
But it's something I'm trying to do more of.
But God, dude, if I lived anywhere near you, I would sign up, volunteer, do it for free. I would be your videographer for that experience.
That would be something.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're about 28 hours away, I think.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, about that. I spent some time in Pittsburgh too, though. So,
do you?
Yeah, so you're not too far from me.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever get up this way, seriously, man, just send me a message, and I'll drive, and we can just meet for lunch or some shit. I just like
that'd
that.
be great.
I'm the type of guy that I like to shake people's hands. You know what I mean? Like I know you, but I still want to shake your hand someday. So
Dawson, are you in Ohio too?
No, I live in Tennessee actually, so I'm a little bit closer, but I'm still probably pretty far. But yeah, no, that sounds really cool. That whole, you said it's like Mardi Gras, but for Key West.
Yeah.
The whole thing. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a 10-day.
And the 12-foot Robert the Doll is scary.
It's I think it's going to be pretty cool. It's we're having a lot of fun with it. We're saying that there's a parade portal that's going to take people back to the 90s, and that ties into the theme. But what we're really doing is we're doing it where my wife and I and Robert have been dead since the 1900s, and the portal's going to reanimate us. So we're going to be in a casket on a forklift going 15 feet up in the air. It's a casket we actually bought in Ohio.
Oh, cool. Cool.
The universe.
Sada guy, no, he's not actually holding Robert. He explained it earlier in the show. So go back and rewatch maybe the beginning. I think he talked about it fairly early on. It's something he's making to do kind of a Philip experiment type thing. And so yeah, he talks about it at the very beginning, but that's not the actual Robert. The actual Robert doesn't get touched by the song.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool because when we invited the spirit to join us on the parade, I was holding it, and I invited the little girl, and who knows, I didn't know if she'd want to or not, but I was standing there, and the doll got heavier. And then there was someone, just a random person who was in the room at that time, and I said, do you want to hold them?
Yeah.
And when he held it, everything changed, and I mean, he could feel some stuff, and all these emotions came out, and it was really intense. So too early to tell that there's definitely something there, but but it started off pretty good, and I did film that too, so I'll show that to you one day.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And yeah, so the parade is a week or 10 days from now.
Yeah.
So in that time leading up, I'm doing the same thing that Jean Otto would have done, or that Myrtle would have done.
Yep.
And I'm explaining to her, fun things and trying to keep her engaged.
Well, I'm going to go on record right now and say this. I mean, the internet is a great thing. If you videotape some of this stuff, I mean, I don't know if you know about video editing and stuff like that, but I would love to be a part of creating a video of this whole thing. Yeah. So I mean, if you're interested, let me know off air. I'm not going to ask you to commit to that now, but
my wife does a lot of video editing, so we usually do that.
She does. Okay, good.
I
love
collaborating. So
gotcha. Okay, perfect.
Do you think the doll? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I know some people want to do videos and stuff like that, but they have no idea how to edit or have contact. But it sounds like you got that covered. This is probably going to be the last question, Dawson, because I don't want to. Okay. I mean, David, we can do some epic live streams. Let me tell you, but I didn't warn you that it might be a 4-hour broadcast, so we're gonna stick to 2 hours here. So. Go ahead, Dawson. Ask the
so I guess question. I'll cap it off. You had mentioned that you invited a spirit to enter the doll, and you said you felt like it got heavier, and the other person felt like the emotions. It just kind of like sparked a question on: do you think that Robert the doll himself, the actual doll that's within the glass, that may have been like a sign that the doll misses being touched and misses like getting played with and like propped up to watch Jean and everything, and that's sort of maybe that was what part of the emotion was about, like it's like, oh, finally, like I get to be held and everything again.
I think that could be part of it. It's really hard to say. Part of me thinks that little girl in there, we try to nurture her, but every day she's getting the same thing. And as more and more people are afraid, I think having people go in there with the negativity or the fear, I think that's very hard on a child's spirit. So maybe this is just a safe spot to get away from that for a little bit. Or maybe not. I mean, I could be completely wrong, But that's what my gut is that, it's like a little break. And the spirits have never been contained in the case. They've always been able to roam free. A lot of people think the plexiglass contains the spirits, and it completely doesn't. So that's why people do experience Robert's curse or blessings all over the world. And twice when I've gone away, it was like one of those spirits was attached to me. And so I'm hoping that the little girl spirit, I'm hoping that Abby is seeing this as a nice place to be. And if she wants to be at the museum, she can be there. Or if I don't know, it's an interesting thing to try out. And like I said, I feel like my obligation is to take care of the child's spirit, make sure that the other forces don't get too heavy.
Yeah. And I want to say, and like I said, we're going to wrap this up because, I don't want to really keep you past 2 hours, but like, I encourage people, I know some people came in later, please go back and watch the beginning. This has been a kick-ass show, I think. A lot of great information. David, so if people want to, you said it once before, but if people want to buy your books, where do they go?
If they go on Amazon and just look up David L. Sloan, and that'll show all the different books. And then for anything haunted, just go to Haunted Key West, and that'll have links to my Robert the Doll Experience tour and every other ghost tour in town, and just some different thoughts on different things. So pretty much everything haunted is at hauntedkeywest.com.
And man, this 2 hours flew by like really quick.
It did.
And if anybody's on Instagram, I'm David L. Sloan on Instagram too. I'm starting to put a little more of the paranormal stuff on there and just general stuff. So
Yep. Cool. So,
Awesome.
It's October, spooky season, Halloween stuff. Do you have anything you want to promote? Like any books or anything coming out?
Just what's going on in Key West? And
that's always
fun with Fantasy Fest. And, it's kind of like Halloween all year long down here. So, whenever anybody gets a chance to come down, if I'm in town, I'd love to see you. And, I've got a really good team of doll tenders at the fort. Dan and Dax and Matt, they've been with me for a long time, and they're all unique and really tuned into the paranormal. We're going to be doing some new tours soon. We'll probably talk more about them a little after Halloween, but there's some really interesting history. There's a hidden cemetery on one of the beaches. It's an old burial ground. And we'll be doing stuff with that and tying in some of the UFO history of Key West too.
Oh, cool. So when you do that kind of stuff, just shoot me a message because we'd love to help you get it out. I mean, my channel's small, but I've got friends that have bigger channels and things like that. I mean, we can really help push that stuff out.
And it's just random sometimes because we'll put stuff and people are like, I would have never known that. And it's like, then they get it's like, oh, cow.
And we do have people that we know that live in Florida. So,
and you've got such an engaged audience too. I mean,
this is a very different crowd.
I mean, great questions, and I'm really enjoying this. So
this is a very different audience than we had last year. Last year was, when we did it on the Warren Foundation, which I'm not part of anymore, but this was, I've got a completely different audience now.
And I'm allowed to be in on the
Dana's
interviews
allowed to
now.
be on the show. She wasn't allowed to on the Warren Files. So, because people thought it was showing favoritism. But no, you're friends with Bill. We had him on last year with you. And, Bill's a good guy. I still talk to Bill all the time.
Yeah, Bill's great.
Yep.
Bill's great.
It really was it was awesome. There was some good questions, good answers. I had a lot of fun learning more about it. And like I said, I did some research beforehand because I wanted to be prepared, and anything I saw that I was like, I wonder if that's true. I kind of like noted. And when I asked like, the misconception thing, because I think that's important, and I'm glad that I asked it because a bunch of people here now know some of the misconceptions that don't really get spread as much, because it's not quite as fun, always. So
and I really appreciate that because things kind of start to spin out of control, and it's really nice to keep them grounded and so thank you
for sure.
Well, thanks, sir.
Yep.
Thanks for hanging out. Seriously.
So if you guys would, just hang on, don't leave yet. We'll go in the back room after we end this. So just want everybody to know, thank you all for joining. And I hope people rewatch this, because this, like I said, this was like the fastest 2 hours I've had in a while. It went woo real quick. Yep. But we do have a new video premiering tomorrow at 7. It's the investigation that me and Josh with Paranormal Seekers did from the Middle Point School. A couple interesting things happened. I shouldn't spoil alert, but nothing really paranormal happened, but there was some cool things that happened. So everybody tune in to tomorrow night's premiere at 7:00 Eastern. And thank you, David, for joining us. Thanks, Dawson, for co-hosting. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for having me. This has been
everybody.
Great.
Yep. The awkward ending happens now, where you hit end stream.
Oh, geez, the doll hand.